This visualization represents an idea, and that idea is the end state that we would like to see all our customers achieving, where they're using data across the whole organization. Of course, we know that most customers start with a BI or IT professional team doing their work, and those teams will be very comfortable in producing apps like this, the statutory technical apps. These are complex big data type apps. Geospatial what if are fairly complex in their own right. And of course, slightly more straightforward is guided analytics, and finally dashboards. So these teams we know do that, and of course they'll grab their data mostly from the internal systems in the company. And sometimes what they do is they stretch out to fetch data externally, and that would be called curated because they've probably done some work to make sure that that is a formal data source for them. Now, one of the challenges that BI and IT professional teams have is capacity. And so quite often what we see in organizations is that they will extend themselves. So they have a certain amount of capacity to do a certain amount of visualization work. They'll then often work out into departmental BI teams. And those BI teams are pretty much little subsets of the original team. And they will produce very similar type of apps. So probably more focused on dashboards and guided analytics, but certainly capable of doing all those things. And because they have some capacity, you'll find that they'll do some ad hoc work for the businesses that they represent. And of course, if we look on the other side of the scale here, and we look at the data, we can see for sure that the data that's coming in is obviously mostly from internal systems, and as I said, the curated stuff. If you look at our systems, we currently go to the web to fetch public holidays. Many of our customers will go to a curated external data source for things like exchange rates, etc. The question is, of course, what are you doing about public domain data and other data? And when I say other data, I mean the data that comes from your business partners, like suppliers or other people in industry. How do you work that data? And this is often a challenge. You'll notice that the scale of this data category is a scale based on what's consumed into these apps by these teams. So it's probably a reasonable representation of the scale that gets consumed, but it's not representative, of course, of what data is available. Because for sure we know that in as much as there's plenty of internal data for a team, there is way more public domain data and other data. And in fact, that is a significantly huge amount of data in the world today. So the question is, how do you get to this data? Now, it all comes down to capacity. So these teams here, BIs, central teams, and departmental BI teams, usually have a challenge, and that challenge is they literally just have too much to do. And the result is that they get very little time to do ad hoc work. In other words, to work with data in the public domain or from other data sources. So the question is, how do we address that problem? And of course, the answer to that is to extend the BI work to self-service. So if you look at a self-service team, these are basically people who are inside business with some tech savvy, and they're interested in using data to understand some of the business challenges that they're facing. And these guys will probably produce dashboards and ad hoc type analysis fairly easily. Some of them will look at possibly producing some guided analytics apps. Guided analytics app is a very operational, usually type of app. And it'll have a certain amount of developer logic built into it to basically take the user from one sheet to the next, or from one subject area to another. And that's fairly technical, which is why we see the self-service guys tending to focus more on dashboards or ad hoc type analysis. But the important point, of course, is that because of their interest, because of their drive, they are the ones who will do much more experimentation into the public domain and into the other data areas. And that's really important. I think the experimental BI is the place where businesses are gaining insights beyond what they're expecting from their internal systems. And of course, the question is, how valuable is that? It's really hard to know unless somebody is doing the experiment. So experimental BI is key. Again, this is, it's one visualization of the idea of what we want to do, and it's the idea of maturing our customers in a journey with data and analytics to really use data to its best.